I'm not worried about fitting in. I'm not worried about looking different. Through this journey, and this is the benefit of staying in this constant state of questioning. For me, I feel like I am closer to what is truth more than ever, more than like when I did, this sounds weird to say, identify as a Christian. Because I don't think I really don't think anyone or most people in their dogmas or doctrines has it right. What's going on, Misfits? Man, it has felt like a minute since I've done a vlog and been on the channel. Maybe I'm just so busy with everything else that's going on. I don't know, but whatever. But I'm here. It's good. Let's do this thing. So today I wanted to talk about some things that I've just observed over the course of this whole skepticism journey that I've been on. And I also want to talk about staying in a constant conscious state of questioning and doubting. And obviously that's not an easy thing to do, but I want to talk about why it's actually beneficial to do that. So to start off with all this, it seems to me, and maybe this is just, it seems this way to me, but maybe this is just truth, maybe this is how it is, and it feels like that. So I guess it is true, but just, I'm going to be super general just in case there is that one person that's like, no, this isn't true, whatever. So it seems to me that we all want to be grounded in something, myself included in that. And then when we start this journey for truth, a journey, outside of ourselves for truth in who we are, truth in the universe, just truth in what is true. It seems like we go into this place of the unknown, of ourselves. We go into this place, it's just a territory that we've never been, and searching for truth. And to me, it looks like, just from all the people that I've watched and observed that have been on this journey and that are a part of this conversation, get about 80% into that journey, and then there comes a point where they fall short of the journey and they kind of stop at that 80%, and then they just fall short. And let me explain what I mean a little bit more by just falling short. It looks to me like when people get about 80% of the way through the journey and then they fall short, it's because at 80% they start to feel satisfied. Like, I don't know about you, but at 80%, like if you're looking at 80% of a picture, once you get to about 80%, you start to see the picture. And it seems to me like when people get about 80% into the journey to find truth, they start to see a picture forming. And then they just kind of like do the math and just say, well, the 20% will fit in this category of thinking, or this religion, or this spirituality, or whatever. And so they just fall short because they want so bad to fit in. It's like they're unwilling to stay in that point of questioning and doubting, and they just get to that 80%, start to see the whole picture, and then they're like, this'll do. And also, by the way, the journey of research, or whatever you want to call it, into truth completely depends on how you were brought up, where you were brought up, the culture you were brought up in. I mean, there can be so many different variables in how you go about your research that can also affect the results of your research. And so to me, stopping at 80% and then just filling in the rest of the picture just so you can fit in somewhere feels like it's not really, like you're just wanting to fit in. You're searching for truth to satisfy yourself to a point, but you're not really looking for true truth. You just want to know what's truth enough to fit in somewhere. And again, like I said, it completely depends on how you were brought up. It leads into the nature versus nurture argument, and I'm not going to get into that, but it has so much to do with that. And also, I know that I'm using the numbers 80 and 20 for this vlog, for this analogy, whatever you want to call it. I'm using 80-20, but in saying that, I'm not talking about the 80-20 rule. I'm just talking about things that I've observed. Or maybe I am talking about the 80-20 rule. So to further explain what the journey looks like up until 80%, here's kind of what I've observed, and feel free to correct me on this if you've noticed some other things or different things, but here's what I've observed is the journey up to 80%. It seems to me like 30 to 40% of the journey, and I say 30 to 40% for a reason, but I'm going to get to that. It seems to me like 30 to 40% of the journey has to do with human, moral, humanistic, whatever you want to call it, standards. Like, okay, what is right and wrong, and how do we get that? It's kind of like these universal human things that it's like, what standpoint are we going to take on that? Because everyone has all of these similarities. But did we get it from God? Did we get it from evolution? Is it something spiritual? Is it existential? Is it just humanistic thinking? What is it? How do we explain all of these human standards that we have, and why do we have them? So I think that that's 30 to 40% of the journey. And the other 30 to 40% is research, insert physics, metaphysics, philosophy, science. All of these different avenues of research that we find to better support God, to better support the first 30 and 40% of the journey. And so here's why I say 30 and 40%, because some people get to the point where they're doing the research in this, and some people find it necessary to say you did 30% in the first category, 30% in the second category, so 20% until you get to that 80%. Wow, this is a lot of math. Don't worry about it. So that 20% is finding, asking the question, does God exist? Is God real? Maybe some of you would argue that you actually start with that and then lead into the other things, but just for the sake of my analogy, I'm putting it at this point, because some people don't find it necessary to question that. Like, I've had some people comment on my videos like, don't encourage doubt, don't encourage skepticism, and yeah, so some people don't go there, but some people do. And so that's why I'm saying 30 to 40%, because yeah, I'll let you guys do the math, but that's my reasoning behind that. Is so some people, 20% of their journey is, does God exist? Which again, completely depends on your upbringing. And I say that because it's like, some people were raised Christian, a lot of people were raised Christian, and then it was kind of a abusive religious environment, and so they found freedom in atheism, which to them I say, good for you, like, get out of that religious environment. And some people grew up not knowing God or anything about God, but they always felt like there was something more. And they never knew about Christianity, or I'd say Christianity, but they never knew about theism. And so then, they start to do the research, and then they're like, oh, okay, so I fit in this. This is where I feel at home. It just totally depends on how and where you grew up. And so with all of that research, it seems that that's like 80% of the journey that I've seen. That it's like, we reach that 80%, and then through all the things that we've gathered, it's like, oh, okay, well, I fit in the Christian category. I fit in the Buddhist, Hindu, Islam, atheist, New Age category. I fit in just a spiritual category. Like, it just, all of the research, which completely, it's totally subjective to you, how you search objectively for objective observable evidence for what you deem as truth. And so, like I said, just something that I've observed in that is that it's like 80%, that's that 80% of this journey to truth. And then once we get that, we're like, okay, yeah, I'm starting to see the full picture, so I'm pretty sure I fit in here. So we fall short of the journey because we're so worried about fitting in. And personally, I'm not worried about fitting in. I'm not even worried about being right. I'm searching for, oh God. Oh man, those pancakes were not good this morning. Anyway, I'm not worried about fitting in. I'm not worried about looking different. Through this journey, and this is the benefit of staying in this constant state of questioning, staying past the 80%. And I don't even think I'm at 80% yet, but staying, like, this is the reason and the benefit for me for going past that 80%, not just looking at the picture as a whole, because I think it can change. The picture can change, and I'm going to get to that as well. Is that for me, like, staying in this constant state of skepticism, of doubting, of questioning. I feel like I am closer to what is truth more than ever, more than like when I did, this sounds weird to say, identify as a Christian, or like in identifying as anything, no matter what you, it sounds weird to say identify, no matter what you called yourself. For me, it's just like being a misfit, the whole philosophical misfit thing. Being someone who's like, I'm not worried to fit in. I feel so much closer to truth than I ever did when I felt like I was fitting in at some place in that search for truth. Because I really don't think anyone or most people in their dogmas or doctrines has it right. Like, I think I definitely see truth in this and that and that and that. Like, the theism and atheism, I think both of them have solid truths to them, that instead of, saying, oh yeah, I fit more in this camping category, so I'm just going to go here or here. It's like, actually, I think the two can blend together, and that is a whole different discussion, and a lot of people are going to disagree with that, but whatever. I'm a misfit. I ain't worried about being right or fitting in. And that's the other thing. I'm not, like I said, I think I already said this, but I'm not worried about being right. I'm not worried about fitting in. Like, I'm not worried about any of that. Like, I want what is truth. I want truth. That's it. That's it. I just want what's the truth. So now here's the thing that I'm leaning to. What is the other 20%? What is the other 20% of the journey that I've been not talking about? I don't think it's more observable, objective evidence. I do think it has everything to do with a subjective experience. So basically, in saying that, from all the research you've done, test it. Don't just feel like, oh, okay, well, here's what my research shows based on how I did my research, based on where I grew up, based on, all of my subjective experience that had to do with how I did and where I did all my research. Like, test it, because the picture might completely change once you see, okay, here's the whole picture, but now I'm going to test it for myself and see if this actually pans out, see if this actually works, see if I feel a sense of fulfillment or if I still feel empty and like I need to search more. Because the reality is that once you put all of it to the test, basically, and then you're still in that state of questioning, because a lot of people, when they're no longer in that state of questioning and they've already decided, okay, I've done 80% of the journey, so I feel like I fit in here, and then they just start to experience it, then they're like, okay, they don't experience it. It's like, well, I'm not experiencing anything, so maybe it's just a time thing, but here's where I fit in. Actually, like, if you don't see any benefit in it, if you don't see any fulfillment in it, then you need to start over. Start from scratch. And I know that's hard to hear, but that's, I think that's how we're going to get closer to truth, is not just see the evidence in front of us, but then test the evidence and not just depend on what the whole picture is looking like, but really test the evidence for ourselves. And I'm talking to, theists and atheists in that. Like, everyone on this search for truth. Like, it's like, okay, now I need to test it, and interpret this how you will, and interpret this, the whole testing it out how you will. I'm not gonna dictate what I personally mean by that, but just that's what I think. I think the rest of the 20% has to do with subjective experience, and I think it needs to be tested. And a fantastic metaphor for this, or movie reference for this, is if any of you have seen Good Will Hunting. First off, if you haven't seen Good Will Hunting, shame on you. It's just an incredible movie. So obviously, if you've never seen Good Will Hunting, here's the premise. There's this punk kid, grew up in the south side of Boston, who is a genius. And then through this and that, whatever, he meets up with a mentor, aka Robin Williams. And he basically goes through this, he's just a punk kid who's a genius, and he doesn't really want to take his genius brain anywhere or do anything with it. But through a series of events, gets to this mentor, totally changed his way of thinking. But in that changing of the way he thinks in order to actually use his mind to better, humankind, whatever, there's this scene that takes place I think it's the pivotal point in the movie where things start to really change. And it's where Matt Damon, Robin Williams are sitting on a bench in the park. And Robin Williams is just saying, you could probably read all about the Sistine Chapel, all the paintings, all the art in the world, and you could probably tell me everything about it. You could tell me all the information in the world. I mean, this dude is a genius. Like, he could read a book in one night, and I mean, he would obtain all of the information. Like, you name it. I mean, math whiz genius. He's saying, you could probably research all the history in the world. Tell me about you could take me all the way around the world with information about things people have done, things people have seen, and all this stuff. And then he starts talking about love. He's like, you've probably slept with a woman. You've probably gone on dates with a woman. But then he says, but do you know what it's like to wake up to a woman that you've been married to for 10, 15 years? Do you know what it's like to look into her eyes and know that you're truly seen? Do you know what it's like to... And then he just goes throughout this whole monologue of love and what it actually is. And it has nothing to do with the information that you've gathered about it, but it has everything to do with your subjective experience and how that feels, the indescribable feeling of love. And I think that directly correlates to what I'm talking about here. So, like, you can do all the research in the world about everything, about the truth of us, the truth of the spirit, the truth of whether or not God exists, the truth of whether, he's not real in evolution, the truth, whatever. You can do all the research in the world, but if you don't test it by your own subjective experience, like, there's my cat. Hey, Grizz. God, I'm so ADHD, it's ridiculous. I swear, my cat is like a dog. I just want to hang out with him now. I'm not even a cat person, it's just, my cat acts like a dog. Grizz, you're gonna have to go somewhere, man. You're distracting me. Okay, so you can do all of the information in the world about everything, but if you don't test it through your own subjective experience, if you don't really find out for yourself what this does, what this does for you, how this fulfills you in any way, or, if that's not the case, then why are we having this conversation? Is it just because, okay, who's right? It's like, that's dumb. Like, who cares about being right? Like, I don't care about being right. Like, obviously, I said this before, I made a video, like, I was wrong. I don't care about being right. I'll, admit that I was wrong any day. I care about the truth. So to say all that, and to wrap it up, I think it is time that we stop falling short of our own subjective experience. And I keep using subjective and objective to describe truth. And I think I'm going to do a series on subjective and objective truth in general, and how a subjective truth can become objective. I've talked a lot about it on my live streams, and by the way, if you haven't been a part of my live streams, it's every Friday night. So, come join us. We'll talk philosophy. It's going to be great. But I think that we need to stop. It's time to stop falling short of this journey and just accepting that the picture may completely change even at 80% of the journey. And, don't worry about fitting in, because it's not all it's cracked up to be. We need to get comfortable with being a misfit. So guys, that's it for today. If you like this video, please make sure you like, subscribe, and share, and please join us, the Misfit family, Friday nights for live streams, so that we can talk about all this stuff, and it's gonna be great. So hopefully I see you there, and I'll see you misfits in the next one. Peace.